Hello there. Welcome to everyone who, and my mum that watches this and who listens to this, of course. Just to say this week that we have got, we're doing a theme of, we're calling it Sign of the Times. This is actually Ralph's suggestions, which I think is a brilliant suggestion, given the, stuff that's been going on over the last week. So really, the reason why it's called Sign of the Times is because there are a number of developments that have been going on because of the way certain markets are developing, energy prices, energy supply, and various sort of consumer behaviours are at a point of change. So I thought it's very interesting from Ralph to do that. You will also, regular viewers of this will notice that Ralph has actually lost about a foot in height in terms of he is further down the screen. I'm told this is I believe this is just chair height or the angle of his computer. But anyway, let's carry on. And there you go. Oh no, there we go. Good. Right, so good stuff. Right, so let's kick off with the first thing, which is basically this week we saw that Russia cut gas supplies to Europe because of apparently maintenance. Anyway, shortly after that, Germany said that it was preparing its citizens. It told them to, they wanted them to cut consumption, again, sign of the times. What's going to happen? We think that, of course, we're in the summer now, but this is a sign of things to come. So, Ralph, what do you reckon about all this?
Well, no, indeed. I mean, this is when I saw that news that Russia was cutting gas supply to Europe for maintenance reasons, I thought, first of all, this is what we all thought. Yeah, right. Yeah. Maintenance, sure.
Yeah.
No, but the word rationing was the word which triggered me, so to speak, to use a new word which people are using these days. And obviously, I do believe this is the sign of things to come.
Yeah.
If the Russian war, or the invasion, I should call it an invasion, is going to last for several more months, then very clearly as we roll into winter, people are going to feel the pinch in their income all the more severely. And obviously you can only do two things. Your household is a bit like a company. You can only do two things in order to protect your bottom line. One is to increase revenues, which is sort of not really going to happen because you can't really increase your salary or your wage. Unless the company does so. And then obviously the only thing you can do is to cut expenses, use less stuff. Now this is a sort of sensible thing, which I'm sure we all are going to do, and we all looking at opportunities of how to do this already. But the key thing here is that the German government was actually asking people to use less gas, use less energy. As already now, we're barely into summer, or we're getting into the height of the summer. So already now people are being asked to use less gas in an anticipation of what is going to happen. Because clearly, Germany is the biggest example here, because they're using 40%, as we now know. Everybody knows this now. 40% of German energy imports is basically Russian gas and oil. And I think this is something which is also going to happen in other countries. Perhaps less so in the UK, because we're only using 4%, but obviously we are dependent on the global energy market just like other people. And I think we are going to see more of this. We're going to see more government appeals to citizens of a country to use less gas and to ratio it. And just a final word on this. The reason that it sort of I sat up when I saw that was the word ratioing. I mean, that does remind you of less rosy times. I mean,
yes,
we weren't alive then. I mean, we may be very old, but even we
weren't alive.
Precisely. But obviously we've all studied some history at school, etc., and read books, and it was precisely, of course, the specter of energy rationing, food rationing, which is the the specter of the Second World War. I'm not going to raise an idea that we're going to go into a Second World War again, but we are going to go into a situation where we're going to need to use less energy and being asked by governments to do so. So that's going to come.
It'll be interesting because, I mean, I don't know how. I wonder how it's going to work. I mean, are they going to? I suppose there are different options, aren't there? I mean, the easiest thing is to ask companies, especially energy-intensive companies, to perhaps to lower production or limit hours or something like that. But I guess with private citizens, not really sure what you can do. I mean, you know, can you just turn stuff off? I mean.
Yeah, you can turn stuff off. I mean, it's interesting that because we've already done this in our household because in anticipation of electricity bills rising, they're already rising, but they're going to rise again in October.
Yeah,
we've gone through our house here and we've just tried to understand where the electricity usages are, and it is actually quite interesting. You can switch a lot of stuff off. Just to give you one example, which we have here, which other people may or may not have, we have this sort of latent heating of our pipes, which uses electricity. And the only reason for that is that you get hot water pretty much immediately from the tap. You don't have to wait. But we switch that off. Now we have to wait a little bit for the water to heat. But we are using less electricity from that particular one source, and we identified 4 or 5 other ones of this nature, and we've managed to reduce our bill a little bit. And there are other ways in which this can be done, but obviously, well, it's finite, isn't it? You can only reduce so much electricity usage. You can reduce it by some amount, but obviously there's going to be a limit to this. And so the sign of the times, we're going to be asked to do this. People are going to look for ways to do it. They will find ways, but then at some point you're going to arrive with your back against the wall, and then you're thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And so then we have to look for more inventive solutions on a larger industrial scale. And so, I think unfortunately that's where we're going to be headed.
Well, Ralph, you'll be glad to know that, you know, I always find you inspirational, generally.
God.
You've just inspired an amazing...
Don't go out much, do you?
It's the best. No, I don't. No, I really don't. In fact, the last time I went out was with you. But anyway, no, now... This is a great idea, and I hope that everyone who's watching this or listening to this is sitting down. This is an absolute corker of an idea. So, Peloton, not doing very well at the moment, right? What they need to do is they need to invent some kind of power converter that they can put on their bikes that will generate electricity for households. This will be, they can talk about this. They can burnish their environmental credentials. They can encourage people to exercise for energy. I mean, I'm doing it already. This is all the slogans. They can have it for free, right? Exercise for energy, right? You could do that. You can power your lights. You can power your cooker. You can just imagine you're thinking, I would like that delicious pasta dish perhaps later on, and you could be pedalling furiously while your partner is monitoring the progress of the pasta on the cooker, and you just have to sort of sprint up that hill a little bit longer just to make sure the pasta is in fact al dente. So I think if Peloton is listening, I think that is something that they need to do as a matter of urgency to save the company.
I love it.
But there you go. So you see, the thing is that, like I say, you do inspire me, Ralph, and that's what I think.
Well,
anyway,
you could call it. Hang on, Peter. You could Peloton. They could call it energize yourself, or they can call it an energize bike. Isn't that great? You could power your car battery from it, or something.
It would be quite something. It would be quite something, wouldn't it, if you could do that? That'd be amazing.
Inspirational idea.
Right, yeah. So,
awesome.
Yeah, there we go. So, anyway, always thinking of the next big thing in this. Right. Okay. So the thing is, yeah, that's going on. It's not going to be just Germany. It's going to be across Europe. Especially, it's going to be everyone. So I think that we are going to be in for a summer of maybe the last hurrah, perhaps, and then possibly as colder weather comes in, that's when we're going to start seeing things. The chat turning more serious, and I think in the UK, for instance, that's when that kind of not fuel subsidy, but you're going to get something. I think it's in October, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is going to help with bills. But anyway, for the moment, for the next few months, I would imagine that it's not. There's going to be a lot going on in the background, but it only start getting serious in September, October time. Yep. Right, okay, so the next thing, we wanted to talk about something that Ralph has got a garage full of, and that's Ferraris, of course. Actually, you don't. You have driven supercars, though, which
I
is more
am
than
not
I
going
have.
to come on this show anymore.
I know. It's just this mental torture.
This is terrible.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's quite interesting this week to see that Ferrari, first of all, they announced their Puro Sangue, which is their new upcoming SUV. I think that they've even called it. They don't even call it SUV. I think they call it an FUV, the Ferrari utility vehicle, because of course, calling it a mere SUV is not enough. But anyway, I think that they announced that, but they've announced also they put forward their detailed plans for the future in terms of electrifying their car lineup, notably by 2030, 20%, only 20% of their cars are going to be powered, by internal combustion engine. The others are going to be a mix of 100% electric or hybrid. Now, I personally think that Ferraris, from a purely theoretical point of view, because I've never driven one, I have been on a bicycle. This shows the real contrast. I've been on a bicycle when one screamed past me, and I remember thinking, wow. Well, first of all, I was thinking, I'm glad I stayed on the bike. That's number one. But shortly followed by, wow, that sounds amazing. When you hear the Ferrari screaming, I mean, it's just a fantastic thing. Anyway, I think that with a lot of supercars, like Ferraris, part of the joy is the sound that they make when you drive them. I think it's quite amusing how, for instance, with the Porsche, they've got Porsche Taycan, where you have an extra option that you can get along with your cup holders, etc. is a speaker that is behind the driver's ear, which has a sound that sounds like to be fair, it sounds like a spaceship, which sounds very cool, but all that is just a false sound. So when you're accelerating, you can hear a louder whooshing sound. And the problem is with something like that is, although it's appealing to your desire for a sound, a satisfying sound, I would have thought myself that if I was in that situation, and of course I would have that option if I was in that position, but every time I press down, I'd be thinking, it's not the same, is it? It's almost like having the passenger sat next to you making vroom vroom noises.
Well,
as you accelerate. But what do you think?
Can I just say on this? I mean, basically, when I was 6 years old, to maybe 10 or 12, I had a go-kart.
Excellent.
Well, guess what I did when I was driving the go-kart? I was going vroom, vroom,
Yeah.
Well, now, 40 years later or whatever, and others, maybe 50 years old or whatever, sitting in a Porsche, having the sounds generated for you. I think that's you're sort of regressing back to the state of mind when you were 12 years old. So I'm predicting the longevity of that particular product feature to be quite short.
Yeah.
But moving on to what we were thinking is of interest here is again, it's a sign of the times. I really think that it may be a story which is a bit marginal, but I think that when Ferrari is announcing that only 20%, let's put this the other way around, that 80% of their cars by 2030, new production cars, are going to be electric vehicles, then you know that the world of petrol combustion engine driven cars is over. That's it. Because as you said, Peter, I mean, Ferrari is more than just a car. It trades on this entire kudos of race history going back 100 years. Enzo Ferrari, when he was alive, was a rock star in Modena. I mean, he apparently couldn't actually leave the house without people camping out in front of his house, trying to catch a glimpse of him. Ferrari is an Italian icon. And when you step into the car, everything around you is racing history. You have a little silver plaque on the dashboard, which says Ferrari Formula One world champion, and then it gives you the number of years, etc. And when you drive the car, absolutely, you have the engine sound. This is the thing. It's not just the engine sound. It's also the fact that when it decelerates, the petrol fumes in the exhaust explode. This is not specific to Ferrari. This happens in other supercars as well, I'm told. But
I love the way you say, I'm told. Yeah, go on.
But the point here is that it is an entire sort of like almost, it's like an ecosystem of sensations when you drive a Ferrari, and one integral part of it is the engine sound. Once that goes, you are in a different world. And if Ferrari, and the people who know this, of course, best are the managers and the engineers of Ferrari. So Ferrari to announce this, to me, is the biggest sign I've seen yet that the era of combustion engines is gone. It hasn't ended yet, but it is gone. In 50 years' time, I think there's going to be people who drive combustion cars, combustion engines.
Combustion cars. That sounds like fun.
Actually.
Am I going to burst into flame on the M1? Mind you, though, some people already have that, don't they? Apparently, with some of the electric vehicles, dodgy lithium-ion batteries.
Exactly. I'm sure there's going to be a transition period. But anyway, so I think that's definitely a sign of the times. That is where we're all going to be headed. If supercar, an iconic supercar manufacturer basically says that by 2030, 80% of our cars are going to be electric vehicles, and I don't think you're going to get a recorded sound feature as an option where the driver goes.
No, absolutely. Wouldn't it be funny actually if you could get the sound option? Would be someone actually doing vroom vroom noises just to for that full experience. Anyway.
Yeah, like an inflatable passenger who comes up.
Yeah. Instead of an airbag, you get an inflatable passenger. Anyway,
and the reason that we are not engineers working for Ferrari is
fair enough.
Okay,
right. Okay. So next topic of discussion. So we're moving over to retail. So
retail.
Retail. So it's really interesting this week. There was quite a lot of news flow on groceries, food prices, basically everything going up. And Sainsbury's made a big thing about announcing more price matches with more products. And Aldi. I mean, it's always Aldi, never Lidl. It's quite funny, but anyway. So with Sainsbury's, because of course Lidl is a premium, of course. By the way, I've got nothing against Lidl. Excellent bakery, like the middle aisle, etc. But I'm just saying that it seems to be it's always Aldi that's picked on. Anyway, Sainsbury's picked on them, and I guess this is all part of them wanting to hang on to their own customers and to stop them from defecting en masse to go to Aldi stores.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is, I mean, I think that you can only price match for so long. After a while, if these raw material prices and things continue to rise, you're going to have to do much more unpleasant things, which is basically starting to cut costs by cutting jobs and things. But what do you reckon of this, Ralph?
No, absolutely. I think it's another sign because, well, clearly, if you're a corporation, there are only two broad ways or strategies to increase profits.
Mm-hmm.
One is to increase revenues, and at the same time make sure that your expense base doesn't actually increase proportionately.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is if you cannot increase revenues, well, then the only thing for you to do is reduce expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 comments on this. There are various ways in which expenses can be reduced. You can sack people, as you said. That's the more sinister option, or the more difficult option, because you're starting to cut into the muscle, let's say. And there are some other ways, which I'm going to mention in a second. But whatever method you use to reduce expenses, it will always be a finite way of doing this. You can only do this for so long, because there are certain expenses which you just cannot cut. And therefore, companies which cannot increase revenues will only be able to protect profits for so long using an expense reduction strategy. So that is why I think it's interesting to see this as a sign of times of things to come, because clearly we are living in a difficult world at the moment. Interest rates are going up everywhere. Inflation is going up. Or let's say inflation is going up, interest rates are going up to combat inflation everywhere. That's the sequence. Recession is on the card in the US, in the UK. Times aren't good, and obviously, therefore, companies need to find a way to protect profits. And this is what we're seeing. So we're seeing in the supermarkets here that Sainsbury is now trying to price match, as you say, and that's the other way of sort of doing or delivering a de facto expense reduction. It's a more clever way. This sort of it's reducing prices for price elastic products. In other words, you reduce prices, and in return, you're hoping that you get higher sales. So disproportionately higher sales on lower prices means you increase revenues. But again, you can only do this for so long, because there is going to be a reputational loss as well, because Aldi and Lidl are the discount stores. Maybe you don't want to compete in the segment of the market which is the discounter. Sainsbury, certainly Waitrose, is not going to want to be known as a discounter, because, I mean, you get your helicopter fuel from Waitrose, and you don't really want to see that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right, moving on.
I tell you, shopping trips with you must be very entertaining, I must say.
Yeah, they are indeed, actually. Maybe we can do another man date, date, and then we
date, of course
go out and go shopping. Anyway, so long story short, I think this is definitely another sign of the times. Everybody, and in particular now we're seeing supermarkets, the supermarket sector is scrambling for profitability, trying to protect the bottom line. Those who are Aldi and Lidl have less issues because they are contracting or attracting all the demand at the moment. The middle market, Sainsbury's, Asda, the Asdas and Sainsbury's of this world are going to try this. There is going to be a limit to what they will be able to do, and we're going to see whatever it might be, let's say 1 year down the line from now, if the situation prevails as it is at the moment, prices going up more in supermarkets. Can't be.
Yeah, you can't hold it back. It's a bit like. Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
No, I never. Weirdly enough, I never got into this. I read 1.5 books, and then I just stopped because I got bored with it.
Oh, really? Okay. No, there was a character in there. I forgot his name, but he carried on going there, going hold door, and it was like, what is he talking about? And at one particularly sort of poignant bit, it turns out that he was saying, hold the door. And it wasn't actually for getting on the London Underground. It was actually holding the door for this like invasion thing like that. And
know it well. Games of Thrones, do you?
yeah, well, sort of. I can only just sort of remember it now. But the thing is that it's inevitable that the prices are going up. The cost of producing stuff is going up. They can only hold this off. They can only hold on for so long, right? So it is unless something happens, and by this I mean the war stops and Putin is not in power. If that happens, then things are going to change very quickly, or relatively quickly, because sentiment will change first,
yes,
and then that will be followed by practicalities. But unless that happens, we are still going to be in the hold door situation. Anyway, so there you go. Right, so moving on then. We're staying within retail, but moving from groceries to apparel retail. Asos had some interesting developments this week. Well, interesting in a negative sense, in that they had an unscheduled trading update, which is always bad. Well, no, it's not always bad. Sometimes they do it and it's really good, but in this case, it was bad. And they blamed inflation, which everyone's going to blame, of course, but also they said it was because of the increasing cost of returns, because people are they're doing things like wardrobing, which is ordering stuff, wearing it either for a Zoom interview or something like that, and then sending it back, or bracketing, which is thinking of the size they think they are, and then ordering sizes either side, ordering it in, finding the size, sending the others back because they're free returns. All of this is very expensive and has proven to be more expensive. The other thing as well, of course, is that there is more buyer's remorse at the moment, because people are ordering a whole load of stuff, they lay it all out, and they try it on, and then they think, hold on a minute, don't know if I can actually afford all this, and then they send it all back. So there's more of this kind of stuff going on. I don't know where, I've forgotten where I got the figure from, but I remember thinking that it's some kind of insane figure, like with sales, clothing sales, often 40% is accounted for by returns. So this means that although you're looking at sales, you think, oh, that's quite good. It's 40% less, 60% less good. And I think that, this is something that has really reached a potentially a turning point, and hence, Ralph, you can jump in here. Sign of the times, right? Sign of the times. Sign of the times. Anyway, so again, could be sign of the times. Are we seeing a bit of a change now in terms of maybe is the growth maturing of online apparel retail or something? What do you think, Ralph?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is indeed why I thought it was an interesting news flow there, because I've often wondered about online apparel, nice word,
Yes. Yeah.
shopping for clothes. I never quite got it. And this is perhaps because I'm just a bloke and I don't have the sensitivities, because I learned from my wife how to do this. I mean, apparently what you do is you just order tons of stuff, it arrives and you try it all on and you return all the other stuff which don't work.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, this may sound cynical, but it isn't actually, I don't think. I believe that an online retailer who does business in the apparel sector needs to offer precisely this type of feature, because otherwise they won't be able to compete with the let's call them the presence retailers, where you go in and you do exactly that. Can you give me this pair of shoes? Oh, that doesn't work. Another one, or this or that, and then you walk out of the shop and you have your one product, but you've done the same thing as you would do in the privacy of your home, using the return service. So I think it's a necessary feature for online apparel retailers to exist, and all of them do the same thing. It's not just ASOS, also the retailers who are domiciled in the let's say upper levels of quality, like Net-a-Porter and others, do exactly the same thing. Now, wardrobing appears to be something which is now marking the pendulum turning too far, because that appears to be it's almost fraudulent. I mean, if you get your T-shirt from ASOS, then you wear it for this podcast, and I'm going to return it later. I mean, that's not right. So that's actually an abuse of the features of this business model.
Is that a new T-shirt you're wearing there?
I got it from ASOS earlier.
Did you?
Oh,
Did you? Yeah. Oh, no. Anyway, carry on.
Can you edit this out later?
Yeah, obviously.
Please edit this out.
But
yeah,
Ralph, good. Mate, your secret is safe with me.
Good, excellent. Yeah. So I'm going to be here next week then, rather than in jail, which is good. So moving on. Now, the interesting thing therefore here is that where are we here in terms of sign of the times? Is this something which spins the end of the increase of the market share for online apparel retailers, or does it mean that they need to think of something else, some better technology? I think you had some good thoughts on that.
Yeah. So anyways, there's two things actually. One, which actually came from, because we talked about this in a podcast the other day, and Xenia Baranova, who I was talking to at the time, she came up with a very, obviously, good idea. The fact that ASOS owns Topshop, Topman, Miss Selfridge. So one thing there is to ensure that you can give stuff back by taking it in to those places, and then that's free, because then there is a chance that you're there and you're like, oh well, that didn't work, 'cause it didn't fit, and then you're in the shop and you think, oh actually that looks okay, and then they'll go and buy that. So that way you can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat in that way. But the other thing is I think, and I'd say this is more urgent, is to ensure that sizing is much better. And I think that a lot of these companies now should have enough data to work out what is likely to fit you and what isn't. And I think that if that is the case, there'd be no need for returns, because you know that things fit you properly. So you either do that via sort of like having like an avatar type thing, I guess, and you can virtually try on clothes. But another way is just to, is to just go on measurements and what people have previously returned. So again, in the previous podcast, I said, there's some sites that I've been to and I have ordered from, and they're very good, where they talk about what's your height, your weight, your age, because the weight is distributed differently, and it goes on. People of this, they tend of this sort of size, whatever, they tend to return 50% of the time or 20% of the time. Those are much better, in my opinion. And okay, they're not avatars, but still pretty good. And it just means that you're going to get stuff, and it means you're less likely to have to return them. Indeed. So I think that's another thing. And given how common online retailing is, I really think now is a very, very important time. So any company that does that kind of thing, I think, will be in a lot of demand.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I think society is clearly changing. We had the COVID situation, and that taught us that it is actually technologically and socially possible to work from home. We are becoming less and less time rich, because it sort of does mean that we're working longer hours, unfortunately. And we just have less time to spend to actually physically go to the shops, unless we wish to do it. There's a word for this, actually, experiential buying. So it becomes an experience that's different. You actually have to have some stuff, some new T-shirts or coat or shoes or whatever. Then it is in fact easier to use the online retailer.
Yeah.
And so the online retailer has, I think, a viable, important business model which slots right into the needs of our changing society at the moment.
Yeah.
And within that, you being the retailer now, you need to sort of make sure that you have got the technological capability to offer features that allow the customer a, let's say, productive buying experience. And so far, this has worked. But now the pendulum swings the other way.
Yeah.
And people are starting to abuse these product features. And so now this either means that those retailers who cannot develop the technology you've been citing are going to have a competitive disadvantage and may even disappear. So once again, it is about technology and how to implement it. Because in the end, I think we're talking again about AI and artificial intelligence. Just go to some other part of the product world.
I'm so sorry.
No, this is fine.
I thought I was lasting through this quite well, but not. I'm dying. But anyway, carry on.
No, I think everybody's amused by this, Peter. This is good.
I'm sure they're trying to hold it off.
This is actually makes my contribution much less tedious than it otherwise would have been. So, if you, oh dear,
sorry, right, carry on.
If we go to the world of music streaming, their AI is prevalent. Spotify and Apple Music, they know me very well. I get offered music, which mostly I actually enjoy. Mostly I like. New bands which I've never heard of. So this is cool. Now, the same sort of artificial intelligence recognition of the customer profile, I think needs to be implemented in online retail. Along the lines which you said, I think the data should be available. And if you don't own it as a corporation, then you might be able to purchase it from somebody else in a similar way that insurance details are swapped about driver behavior. And if you get this right, and if you develop an avatar who has the, let's say, physical idiosyncrasies of you specifically as a customer, or you have an avatar which covers a sufficient common grounds of a sufficiently homogeneous customer group, like let's say 10,000 people who all have the same sort of build, then you should be able to offer products which you don't have to return because they sort of fit on the first attempt. Or maybe the customer doesn't have to buy doesn't have to get 10 pairs of shoes, but only 2 or 3 because they know typically one will fit. And that, I think, is going to be the sign of the times again. That is, I think, going to be the sign of the future, and those online apparel retailers are going to prevail who are able to implement, well, first of all, develop the AI and then implement it in this particular way.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's very good. I mean, I think that it is certainly important for them to take into account the physical idiosyncrasies. I mean, I find, for instance, I'm always finding, for instance, that, you know, when I'm buying T-shirts, they fail to take into account my sort of chiseled six-pack. And I just find that it's not quite the same, you know, and I mean, as you can see, this six-pack is, you know, it is a bit of a problem, I find.
Yes.
The defined pecs as well, it's just, you know, it's so annoying, and I get this all the time, and I cannot say how much I need this kind of AI.
You know what? They're going to be men, and it's going to be men, you know this, who are going to have an avatar who is like chiseled and toned, and then nothing ever fits them because it has nothing to do with what they look like in reality.
I don't know what it is. But yeah, anyway. I think we'd better finish on that note. So anyway, Ralph, as always, brilliant to speak to you. Thank you very much for everyone watching and listening, etc. Just to let you know, the podcast this week is going to reach 500th. It's 500th episode. Thank you to everyone who's listened and recommended us and things like that. We're going to obviously going to keep continuing it with this, and we'll see. But anyway, thank you very much indeed. Have a great day, whatever you're doing, and we'll be back again soon.
Will do. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.